Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So we have one final community-based interaction to talk about, and that is this idea of symbiosis. So symbiosis is a really general term where we're talking about just two or more species that live together in some close long-term association. And more often than not, they have probably co-evolved together, whether for the benefit or in some cases the damage of a particular individual species within that relationship. So when we talk about symbiosis, there's three types. So symbiosis itself, um, just be careful because this term sometimes gets misused in just general language. When we talk about symbiosis from a biological or an ecological standpoint, we're just talking about species that live in this close association. We're not deciding or determining or describing how that interaction is occurring, and who's benefiting or potentially not benefiting from that particular association. What we do then is drive into the specifics of that symbiotic relationship, and then we can talk about what type of symbiotic relationship it is based on the interactions and how they're happening. And that's where the idea of parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism comes from. So when we talk about parasitic relationships, this is often an interesting one because we're talking about one organism, the parasite, who is benefiting from the relationship, while the other organism in the relationship, the host, is being harmed. And this often shows a pretty tight coevolutionary relationship where the parasite has to evolve to do its ability to get what it needs from its host, but then the host evolves to try and avoid that parasite. So the parasite has to evolve again. Um, and so the parasite typically lives in or on another organism. The host provides food, a place to live, helps to spread the parasite's offspring, and there's a whole lot of parasitic relationships that we can talk about. So leeches, which feed on blood meals from their hosts, fleas, ticks, right? There's a nice engorged tick there. Tapeworms, these are aphids feeding off of the honeydew from the trees. Lots of organisms that we would typically think of as things that would make us sick or other species sick are often parasitic. So again, that parasite is benefiting from the relationship by getting all of the things it needs from its host, but as a result, they are stealing those nutrients and stealing that energy and stealing whatever else might be the case in that relationship from their host at the expense of the host's ability to survive and reproduce. So there's a really tight, fine line that parasites have to walk where they are stealing those materials from their host, but at a rate that doesn't necessarily kill their host, at least not immediately, until they can get their offspring to the next host, because they need that host in order to survive, reproduce, and have their offspring be spread to the next available host. Mutualism, here we are both looking at species benefiting from the relationship. So they are all getting a positive end result out of this. And so the example I've got here are ants and aphids. So aphids, although they are parasites to the plants that they are consuming on or feeding on, they extract fluids from sugar conducting vessels of plants, making this compound called honeydew. And so it's this really sugary, watery mixture. And in the process of doing that, the aphids creating that honeydew, the ants get that honeydew from the aphids, and the ants then use that honeydew as food. In turn, those ants then provide protection from other predatory species to those aphids. So the aphids provide the ants with food, the ants provide protection back. And as a result, both species in this relationship are mutually benefiting from it. The final type of symbiotic relationship is commensalism. Most kids don't have a problem understanding parasitism and mutualism. Those are generally ones that are pretty easy to distinguish, pretty relatively easy to identify. The commensalism gets a little more tricky. because here we've got one species who is clearly benefiting from the relationship, while the other species involved doesn't really seem to be helped, but they're not really getting harmed by it either. And so there is some question among scientists with certain examples, is this truly no help, no benefit to that second species, or is it just not something that we've been able to easily identify? Um, so the example that I've got here with commensalism is the clownfish in the anemone. So anemones, I'm sure we've probably all seen Finding Nemo in our life, right? Those anemones have stinging tentacles that will paralyze other fish. The clownfish have evolved a tolerance to those stinging tentacles, and so the clownfish live within those tentacles of the anemone and are protected from other predators that might try to come after them. The clownfish clearly benefits from this relationship. There really isn't a question there, but the anemone doesn't really seem to be helped or harmed by the presence of that clownfish. So if we take that stance on that relationship, it would appear to be a commensalism relationship or commensalism. So if we sum this all up, right, commensalism, species benefits, the other species is neutral. In parasitism, the parasite is being benefited while the host is being harmed. And in mutualism, both species are receiving some benefit from that interaction.